Hello and welcome to the Power Lunch live show. As I was just saying to Steve here, someday I'm going to get an awesome intro with like music and bum, 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 bum. Today is not that day though. So you just got me saying, hi, welcome to the Power Lunch live show where we have as many as 4 awesome guests. Sometimes 1, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, occasionally 5. And I think once we had 6. So how many do we have behind me? You're about to find out. So I am the guy who knows a guy. For those of you who don't know me, I'll do a quick introduction as people discover that something live is happening and log into it. So as said, I'm the guy who knows a guy. I have a few things you may be interested in, you people in the audience. One is that there's a few different ways to connect with me at guyknowsaguy.com/meet, including my open virtual coffee, my connection bonanza, and my networking gathering, which is the second Thursday of every month at 5:30 p.m. But as all good networkers know, the best networking happens before and after the event. So I open the doors at 5. All those are at that link right there. And if you are saying, Michael, you know lots of stuff, I wish I could learn from you. Well, you're in luck. I have the Inner Circle, guyknowsaguy.com/inner circle, which gives you access to me in a Zoom call, group call every week for only $97 a month. So information on that is there. And that's enough about me. I bet you want to meet the guests who are behind me. Here they are, Steve Feld and Toby Goodman. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello.
So the format, if you have not watched the show before, although I'm sure you probably went back and watched all 36 episodes to get, fully grounded, because that's certainly what I do when I go on a show is I watch every previous episode, give or take every previous episode. So if you haven't watched any, the format is we're going to do a quick round of introductions. And then each of you has sent in a topic that you will be sharing with us. You're going to introduce your topic in a few minutes, and then we will open it up for a free-flowing conversation. And it could go here. It could go there. It could go anywhere. Sometimes we have guests who are totally, different, and it's always interesting to see, how the paranormal investigator and the marketing guru and the accountant, how they flow together. I feel like the topics of growing your business and making more money may synergize. Growing your business through podcasts and making more money through business. You may have some synergies. I don't know. It may be an awkward juxtaposition. Try to find a way to do it. But let's see what we can do. But first, let's meet our guests. Biz Coach Steve Feld, tell us about yourself.
Hi, thank you, Michael. Well, I'm Biz Coach Steve Feld. I'm a business marketing strategist, podcast host, a professional speaker, author of 8 books, and coffee enthusiast. And business owners and coaches and entrepreneurs hire me to crack multiple 6 and even 7 figures without burning themselves out.
That sounds useful.
Yes.
And Toby Goodman of narrowpodcasting.com.
Good day. Oh, good evening. It's Friday night, actually. I don't feel as pumped up as I should. So 25 years professional musician, hence the drums in the background. And these days run a podcast production company with a team of about 8 people. I think at the moment we put about 30 shows out for people much like Biz Coach Steve and yourself, Michael. And we're really focused on helping business owners create podcasts to grow their business, rather than create podcasts to look at vanity metrics. So, and then on top of that, of course, I work with a handful of select clients, helping them use the advanced strategies that I've also written about in my book, Narrow Podcasting. So that's all there. There's a course, there's a production team, there's a book, there's a one-on-one access, there's all sorts of things. So yeah, that's where I am.
Very good. And you'll be happy to know this show neither has vanity metrics nor grows a business. So wait a minute. Actually, I did recently get a client from this show. So I guess that counts as growing the business.
Correct.
Which is good because we don't have vanity metrics. Although we do have some loyal followers. I do occasionally have people reach out to me afterward and say, hey, I really liked that person you had on the show. Could you connect me to them? So be on your best behavior. You never know who's watching.
I didn't realize this was live, so I need to get it. I need to get it together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's only
Friday
2
night.
p.m. I don't know why you're tired.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. The days of your time zone being the world's time zone have passed. Now our time zone is the world's time zone.
And
I'll
the
catch
days
up
of
to you
our
guys later today.
yeah,
Yeah.
the days of our currency being bigger than yours as well also gone now.
But it's a great time for us to come visit.
Come on over. It's cheap.
Everything's on sale.
Everything's on sale. The whole country.
The whole UK is on
Yeah.
sale. 20%
We're
off.
ready. Yeah.
Yes.
The
50.
estate
Fantastic.
sale is happening now.
Yeah. Come on.
All right. So speaking of money, who wants more money? If your message is money, want more money? Steve, tell us about it.
Yeah, that's the big thing with business owners. We've all heard it. I've tried everything regarding marketing. I mean, if you tried everything in marketing, everything, networking, social media, you name it, just by luck itself in the universe's aura, something should have hit. But we know you didn't try everything because they're all worrying about the tactical side of things. That's your direct mail, your email, your blogs, all that, your tactical. They're not focusing on the strategic side, which is your message, and you've got to speak to your target market. So stop being everything to everyone. Everyone is not your target market. So let's get rid of that idea right now. Unless you're selling oxygen and there's no oxygen on the planet, then everyone is your target market. Other than that, you really need to know who your target market is, find out their pain points and how you solve them. And that's what you need to start working on the strategic side to get that emotional output. Then look at the tactical side. Where is your target market hanging out? And I've had business owners going, well, I just I'm on TikTok now. Great. Is that where your market is? I don't know. Then why are you on TikTok? Don't waste your time on it. You're blasting it out to no one. So find out where your market is hanging out. I mean, some clients, it could be direct mail right through the mailbox, a postcard, and it still works. Whoever says direct mail doesn't work, sorry, folks, it still works pretty darn well. You just have to have the right message and make sure you're mailing to your target market. So don't waste the money mailing to everybody. So that's the big thing on, making sure your message is clear. That's how you're going to make your money.
I like it.
And too many business owners are just gray, fuzzy.
What's wrong with being gray and fuzzy?
Yeah.
Speaking of TikTok, but one of my markets is on TikTok. Although for me, it's almost backward. I got on TikTok because I just like, talking to myself, and it's really easy to produce 60-second rants. And then I started getting a following of 5,000 followers. And a lot of them are people who are struggling to find better jobs and, really could use some networking skills. And then I kind of worked it backwards of, I'm getting a following. How can I serve them in a way they pay me? But I was still at least thinking, if I'm getting a following, what can I monetize out of that? And getting them, and like my inner circle program can serve them and things like that. But sometimes it's a matter of recognizing I am doing this mostly for fun. My business is, I'm not going to say TikTok is my marketing strategy. I'm on TikTok. I'm getting a following. I have not made money from it, but it's fun. So it's a business hobby. And I think some business owners do fall into that trap. Be like, no, TikTok is a serious marketing strategy. Have you made any money from it? Well, no, but social media is the way of the future, and there's a lot of money in that. So, if you're not making money from it, it's a hobby, which is okay, as long as your business isn't a hobby.
Yeah, but it leads to the next thing. Like your TikTok started one way, it diverted. Now it leads into something that's paid. So
yeah, not that anyone's paid yet, but it could. A lot of it is I haven't spent the time to figure out what is the tactics of converting people from that platform to a conversion space.
It strikes me that people who are on TikTok who are struggling to get work aren't anyone in this room's target market, by virtue of the fact that they're struggling. But it's a lovely thing to help people if you've got the tools. And so the way I think about how you can monetize that TikTok following, congratulations. I don't even have it yet, and I'm not sure I will. But the nice way and the ethical way of monetizing those people is going to be to recognize that a number of those people do hang around your target market. And that's the link, isn't it? The link, if you're having fun, then that's okay. If you're talking about it as a business tool, then you can then enable people who aren't ready yet to let you know and recognize and train them in a nice way to identify the people that are. And when they're ready, they'll come to you.
Yep. Well, and struggling, like these aren't people who are living in a box. These are people struggling with a $45,000 a year job, $50,000 a year job. So they're not broke. They're just not where networking could get them. Which also, it's for me, it's also a mission thing. Like I have good paying clients because they have successful businesses, and then I see other people who I think, I might be able to teach them in 60 seconds something that could actually change the trajectory of their career. And so I want to share what I know, because I never want to be like, I could help you and change your life, but you can't afford me. So sucks to be you, poor guy. Sucks to be poor, doesn't it? Glad I'm not one of the poors. So I always try to have some way to.
Is that an English thing, Michael?
I am half English or half British. I think I'm
Which
half
one
English
is
and half Welsh.
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
So, and actually, I always have. I will hand the podium to Toby for a moment, because I think that Steve's and Toby's your messages are somewhat aligned. So I'll have you both introduce your topics, and then we'll open it up and kick it around. So, Toby, tell us a bit about podcasting that grows your business.
The podcast industry, understandably, and the marketing around it is all about growing your show, growing your podcast. And a lot of the businesses that exist around podcasts are about getting more listeners, ultimately getting more sponsorship. And I don't deal with any of that, which frustrates some of my colleagues and partners who I work with quite closely in the industry. So what I do is I think, like you guys as well, as I work with experts who are, for example, I'm working with a cancer doctor at the moment who runs 7 locations in Michigan and Wisconsin. I'm working with an astronaut. I'm working with therapists. I'm working with political advisors. So these people are remarkably good at what they do. They're world class. And they are looking to grow their business. They're not looking to have a podcast that gets them likes and listens and follows and 5-star reviews. Like, all of that stuff feels good, but it's not where they are at. They're very, very busy practicing really hard at being the best they can be. Cancer doctor, for example, is a great example of that. The ever-changing world of what's available in medicine and all of that kind of stuff. So these people are not, the people that I work with are not interested in fame. They're not interested in vanity metrics at all, as we spoke about before. They're interested in using their podcast to get in there rather than get out there. And with the bigger business owners, with the 8-9-figure business owners that I work with, they're using it actually as a retention and a recruitment tool, right? They're not actually using it as a, come and look at me. And the people that are kind of mid 6 to 7, they're using it to get in there, not to get out there. And so my whole book, my whole strategy around narrow podcasting is just like you guys say, it's about target market and identifying the target market, identifying the single biggest result, which is a nice, have to attribute that to Michael Port from Book Yourself Solid, who has a lovely system. I was working as a Book Yourself Solid professional for a while. A great system. So target market, single biggest result. And if you know that, then you can use a podcast to get in there with people, because what do everyone, when I say people, I mean literally people. We all love the sound of our voice. That's what everyone loves the most. So one of the things, so by creating a show where you can speak to your target market in a non-threatening way and give them a really good listening to, will change everything. And I don't know how many additional questions you've got around this, Michael, but essentially where consultants, where people like us are doing this wrong, in my opinion, is they are creating prescription style podcasts with lovely automated calendar links. I was invited to go on one the other day. Do you agree to share on social media? Do you agree to do all of this stuff? And I'm thinking, all right. And then the last one said, give me 3 questions. Give me 3 questions you'd like me to ask you, which translates to me as, you don't want to do your homework, you don't care, and I'm just filling your content quota for the week. So I actually didn't. I just thought, screw it, I'm not going to do this one. The podcasts that my guests are interested in creating are short solo podcasts, which are authority pieces mixed with guest interviews. And those guest interviews are thoughtful, they're well prepared, they're looking at what's between the lines of whatever they've picked up on LinkedIn. And the purpose of that podcast is to create a unique conversation that is memorable between you, the podcaster, the business owner, and the guest that you have on. And I've identified pretty much that you can speak to a wide range of people in your podcast, so long as they fit the following criteria. They are either past or prospective clients. And that's not to say you hustle or sell them on the podcast, but they are people who are past or prospective clients. They're people like your TikTok audience, Michael, who hang around your target market, therefore are powerful referrers. And you could go even more specific and say, a couple of those people, or some of these people, very specifically, know somebody who could be a client for you. And again, I'm not saying that you should get them on the show and immediately ask for an intro, but it's good to do your research, right? And the third bracket, if you like, the third type of person that you can have on your podcast is a joint venture partner. And they could be one or more of all of those things. But if you can have a meaningful conversation on a human level with someone that they will not forget because you're actually interested in them, you don't try and be all interesting. No one's got all the content anyway. But if you show up and you're really interested in somebody, they're still actually shocked that you're asking these other questions that are not necessarily about direct business stuff. I had a great business coach on my podcast the other day, Anna Malikian, who you may know, Michael. She grew up, right. So she grew up, but she grew up in Portugal and she lives in Arizona, and she did her PhD in Sunderland, which is a freezing cold northeastern town in the UK. And that's an interesting story. And that's not something that she necessarily is picked, but I'm looking for things. Where's the alignment with me? I've been to that place because I live here. What was that like? These are unique conversations. They're not pitch fests, which is what a lot of business coaches and business consultants are doing in the podcast space. It's just creating a pitch fest. And I actually think they're more listenable if they're human conversations, and they're more memorable to your guests. And that builds up relationship capital. And the thing about the narrow podcasting strategy is that's just the beginning. And we're all understandably feel like we're under this pressure to keep creating more content. And we forget that goodwill we've built up with our guests. And our guests they've invested time in us, and so we should look to give them ROI and start working in a way that you work fantastically as well, Michael, with networking them together. So there's a whole, on the back end of the narrow podcasting and the profitable pod method course that I've created, it's basically about a special alumni network, is linking people together in that way. So that's my take on how to use a podcast that grows your business rather than to create a podcast that costs you time and stress and makes you feel like you've got more content to create, which I'm just completely over. Is that helpful?
Absolutely. And I love the concept, because that's the concept behind most of my podcasts.
Right.
But I was talking to a profitable podcasting coach, and she was like, "You have 4 too many podcasts," because I have 5. So you should have one podcast that focuses to one product with one target market. And I was like, that's probably very good advice. I'm not going to take it, but that sounds like great advice.
Yeah. The target market thing as well, if I could just address that as well, because I think that's a really interesting thing, and coming from a world of book yourself solid and single biggest result for specific target market. Awesome. That means we can partner if we deliver different results to the same target market. Done. So all of that kind of works really, really well. And you'll see I have a podcast called Podcast Business Coach, which is super specific, right? And the target market is guys like us, essentially. Then I have another podcast called Moving Conversations, which is a really broad, going back to what I was just saying before, is a really broad, wide-ranging conversations with people that interest me.
Mm-hmm.
And I happen to know that they might know people that might hire me, right? So the single target market narrow focus thing on that side, that positioning is not overt. The listeners don't know what's going on in the background. I'm still trying to create something that's listenable and people are proud to share, but the results are super. My focus is super narrow. It's just that I'm not showing it to you, which is also cool, I think. And you don't need to publish that kind of I only work with doctors in the New York area. Like, I think that's a fantastic strategy, but I also think marketing and other things can be slightly adjacent to that. Otherwise you just look like you're hunting all the time, and I don't think that's necessarily a great look.
Yeah. And like this show came about because the Guy Who Knows a Guy podcast was losing focus because I don't like saying no to people. So I know people come on the show and be like, well, you're not quite in the theme for the season, but I'm not really sure what this is. Okay, sure. And there's this cluster of episodes, just like people who came on the show. And so I said, well, I'll make a roundtable show and kind of make the catch-all. And originally I thought, how this show can't possibly be good. I'm inviting basically anyone who thinks they're interesting enough to apply comes on the show. And like, I'm going to do it for 2 months, realize it was a terrible idea, and then come to my sentences and stop doing it. It is now coming up on a year, and basically every episode has been great because it brings this potluck mixture of different people and gets them out of, as I said, the Pitch Fest. You listen to a lot of people's interviews. You listen to 5 interviews they've done, they all sound the same because they're on their talking points, and they know who their audience is, they know who their avatar is, they know what the message is, the problem they solve, and they make ssure they say it in every single interview. You can't do that on the show very effectively. Right. You're going to get pulled off by the other people's topics.
Right, and it's like watching a politician do the rounds on all the morning TV shows. Like, it's the same. Like, you've seen the first one, and there was a time not that long ago in podcast land where that was kind of okay because there weren't that many business podcasts. But during COVID, everyone started a podcast, so and there aren't actually that many interesting people around. So there's maybe more podcasts than there are interesting people at this point, and so and the ones that aren't podcasting should, and vice versa, and all of that. What's that? Is that the Christopher Hitchens quote that everyone's got a book inside them? In most cases, that's exactly where it should remain. Like, it's the same with the podcast, and but I wish people would just be a bit more thoughtful, because you don't need to have a book inside you. You don't need to be super interesting, But if you can be interesting and do what you're doing, Michael, which is bring people together,
Mm-hmm.
then it is interesting. What happens if I put, you don't want to put certain people in a room together, maybe, but back to Michael Port, there's a level of a red velvet rope policy around what you're doing. So, which I think you're sort of getting there with, Michael. It's coming. So yeah.
Well, and that's what works well with this is that I often say I have two producers on the show, Serendipity and Random Happenstance.
Yeah.
Because there is literally no system to who gets on the show, but it still works out. So whenever someone's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't make that date," then my response is always, "That means you're not meant to be on that show." Like the universe puts the right people on the show together, and it always comes out good. So if someone doesn't show up, like there are 4 people who work for the show. If you look at the title, there's 4 names. There's 2 of you here. You're the 2 who are meant to be here, and this is the conversation we're going to have. Maybe if the other 2 had been here, it wouldn't have been the same conversation.
It would have been awful.
Yeah,
awful.
But I would not necessarily recommend like letting the universe drive your podcast, especially not if it's your only show. But for what I do, I meet people and make connections and make those random serendipitous connections. And that takes time, which is why my clients hire me to spend the time networking. So it makes sense for me. Look, I know a lot of random people. Whereas if what you do is, say, teach people how to build a business through podcasting, then your show might be more focused on, say, business owners who have podcasts and that category.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, when we all started using the word #pivot on all our posts a couple of years ago when we were locked in our houses, people really, got even my mum learned how to use Zoom. All that moment, we were already ahead of the curve because we were kind of mainly working in this way. But then you take it to another level and do this kind of stuff, Michael, because you're creating serendipitous moments online, which is so cool. I spoke to a guy called Julian Treasure, who's a friend and a client. He was just on Stephen Bartlett's show, which I don't know if it's big there, but it's like the biggest business podcast in the UK. He's one of the top 5 TED speakers. He's written a book about speaking and listening. And I spoke to him about COVID when it was going on. And he said, the problem is what we're missing is those serendipitous moments of communication because we're all just showing up like this in front of our screen. And, you go to a conference and you do business at the bar. Like that's how it goes. And so props to you for doing this, Michael, because even though we are all being well allowed to go back out to bars again, isn't this cool that we can do this and you're creating that the serendipity. It's awesome.
Well, and across 3 times. It's Steve, what time zone are you in?
I'm in Mountain Standard all the time, but same as Pacific right now.
Okay, but like we couldn't go out to the bar because we're in 3 different time zones. We're in 3 states, or we're pretty far apart. So there's a lot of things we can do with these kinds of settings where time and space mean nothing. We can bring people together from around the world and have these kinds of things. And that's something I've been big on is from early on. I noticed what I call the DJ fallacy. DJs assume that you go to the club for music. Now you wouldn't go to a club without music, but you don't necessarily go for the music. You go to meet the people and you go to have the whole experience. And the same thing with events. You wouldn't go to an event. You might not go to an event without speakers, but you're not necessarily going for the speakers. You're going for the conversations in the bar and the hallway. And maybe you'll learn one thing and that leads to a conversation. But so many of the virtual events when they first went online were just speakers.
Yeah.
It's just like a playlist of videos of like, listen to these speakers talk at you. And they wondered why people weren't excited by virtual events because they took out all the best parts. And so I looked at it and said, okay, how can we get the bar and the hallway onto the screen? And that was always my focus in any of the events I ran, was to get more of that. Yeah. To create the bar in Zoom.
Yeah. Awesome.
Steve, your thoughts?
Yeah, I miss a lot of the networking. Thank God the stages have been opening back up. So getting back out there and going to those conferences and events. I mean, well, since COVID, I think I've already been to like 4 or 5 conferences in person. And it's like, one thing I noticed is a lot of people forgot how to use communication skills and interpersonal relationship. And it was very common. You could tell who was struggling with Zoom for that year or so, and then who embraced it. Because I went virtual 6 years ago. So when the world ended, everyone was coming to me like, what's that thing you're talking about and you're on all day? I go, Zoom? And they're like, yeah, what is it? And I'm like, oh, I wish they would have had an affiliate program.
Oh man, that would have been awesome, right? Paid the house off in one day.
Oh.
Yeah, for sure. That's right. Yeah, and so we were way ahead of the curve. You know, like watching my kids' teachers trying to get it together and stuff was just awful.
I mean, my kids were like, "Hey, Dad, can you come and show the teacher how to use Zoom?"
Yeah.
So what's interesting for me is I'd never used Zoom before March 2020. I'd never used StreamYard before March 2020. You know, I discovered all of this in the pandemic. Everything I did was local. And the reason I was always a broke networker was because the area I'm in is a small county in the corner of Connecticut. It's not where things are happening. So there's just not enough money in the system for I can connect everyone in town, and it still wouldn't make anything happen because just not unless you're building submarines or vaccines. There's not a lot of money down here. But I had this epiphany when my BNI group went to Zoom, and I'm tech comfortable. I don't know if I'd say savvy, but I'm like, okay, I get most of these things are designed to be easy to use. And like, if our BNI group just went on Zoom, everyone else's BNI group just went on Zoom. And so the first thing I saw was I can network around the world all of a sudden. So I started going to events in Washington, the UK, and Malaysia, and Australia, and all these different places. It's also when I discovered the importance of, going west in the morning and east in the evening, because a UK BNI group meets 1:30 my time, 1:30 a.m. So I did that exactly once. But Australia is great because it meets at like 7 in the evening. So those were easy to go to. But yeah, so I got on I jumped right into it because I said, I can take what I've been doing to a next level, and just saw the opportunities there and jumped into, when I discovered StreamYard, I discovered Zoom. And so I actually felt more connected once lockdowns happened, because I'm reconnecting with friends who were 50, 100, 500 miles away. I started a D&D game, Dungeons and Dragons game on Friday nights, which I had not done in 10 years because I didn't have friends close enough. I've got a young child. You got to drive out there. It takes all evening. A 2-hour D&D game on Zoom takes 2 hours. And I just started seeing all these opportunities. I'm hearing people complain like, "Oh, I'm so bored. I'm binge watching Netflix and doing this." I'm like, what lockdown are you in? Because I'm working harder than I've ever worked. I'm more connected than I've ever been. And this is more exciting than anything I've ever seen. How is everyone else not seeing what I'm seeing?
It was a golden opportunity to connect with people that you wouldn't be able to get anywhere near as well, because they were locked at home and they were twiddling their thumbs and they weren't traveling and they were trying to get away from their significant other or their kids' homework. And people did have more time. People actually had more time to be effective. And, any of us who were working online before that were almost sort of shocked, I think, at the amount of how easy it was to get in touch, how easy it was to book meetings. And I think that's now changed a little bit as people have kind of gone back to reality. And broadly, I think that's healthy. I think it's healthy to be a human person in society. I went to central London last night, and I've been to London a lot. I live half an hour out of town. My wife works there every day, but I mainly chill here. But I went to an award ceremony last night, the International Women's Podcasts Awards, presented an award, and it was just like, whoa, like so busy, like proper London busy, Thursday night, like it never happened, But there are still, like you said, Steve, there's still that sort of feeling of you have to clock people in terms of how are you feeling about this? because it's pretty overwhelming, frankly, to be in a room that's buzzing, whatever. But you've got this additional layer of like, is there anxiety here? Is this the first time? I mean, I've been to LA, and when I went to LA in March, and it was kind of like quite a lot of masks and quite a lot of there was a badge system at the conference I went to, which was a sort of red, amber, green, this is how comfortable I am touching you, and elbows only to, give me a kiss sort of levels. And then plus the pronoun badges, everyone was sort of badged up massively. And then masks, and then people apologizing for wearing masks because it was their wife at home who was vulnerable and they were trying to do their bit. I had one guy who said that, which I was like totally sensitive to, and you do your thing, man. But unfortunately, when he took his mask off to have a drink, he'd clearly not brushed his teeth in weeks, so it was those things that people forget, not just the ability to communicate in person, but also turns out some hygiene issues. But
I'm proud to say I never stopped brushing my teeth throughout any part of COVID.
Thank God. Yeah. So
wait, you're supposed to do that nowadays?
Yeah. I just Photoshop the white teeth in, and then
There
that's
you
it.
go.
Yeah. So it is interesting, but also I only live 15 miles away from the centre of London. I spent 2 hours in transit yesterday because capital cities and all of that, so it was a bit of I'm really glad I went, but I'm also like, oh God.
Yeah. Well, and that brings up one of the points, one of the things that I've certainly kept doing and will keep doing is I can make so many more connections, meet so many more people. Even I have one local client. Most of my clients are in different time zones. I have one local client, and even though she's 30 miles away and the company she works for hired me is maybe 15 miles away, when they wanted to have a meeting to discuss how she was doing, the first one I went up there, I'm like, oh, they're nearby, I'll just go up there. Then I realized a 30-minute meeting took 2 hours. Yeah. So next time I said, we're going to have a Zoom call. We're going to have a Zoom call. I don't need to drive up there. I don't need to spend 30 minutes in the car. And so I can do 6, 7, 8 back-to-back 30-minute Zoom calls. And I realized with my business, I was like, why didn't I do this? Is it just I didn't think of it before the pandemic? Then I realized, no, the people I need to talk to weren't on Zoom. They wouldn't have had calls on the phone, or we couldn't have gotten that level of engagement. And so I just couldn't have done the volume of connections that my business is built on. The technology has made it easy and acceptable to meet with 8 or 10 people during the day. The volume of people you normally meet at a conference, I can meet on my calendar on a Tuesday. Yeah. So
that's also a massive shift in perception of value from those people, though, isn't it?
Right.
Because they, you charge X for a 6-month consultancy project, and they expect you to show up in their offices across town or across the states or whatever. And it's all bullshit. Like, actually, you don't need to do it. I think there's a certain element of like, yeah, we're going to meet in person once because it's great to break bread with someone. It's great to be in a space. You can get a read on someone in person that you'll never get like this, but you can get pretty close. So if you've got a good client or someone, I think it is definitely worth going, right, we're going to hang. But actually, I tell you what, most of our work's going to be done like this because I've got a comfortable environment at home, and so have you. So long as you've got a good internet connection and your dog doesn't bark too much, we're going to get more done. We're going to get more done like that. So, and the world basically didn't believe what we've all known for years until they were forced into it. My sister was a classroom teacher. Absolutely just did not believe not only what I was doing was possible, but that it could be even slightly ethical to charge people, what I get paid for sitting at home, because she's a classroom teacher to kids, and the way you learn is in person. And I think that, of course, kids need to be with people, and there's certain subjects, art, music, young children need that physical, all of that stuff, I believe.
Mhm.
But when you're doing business strategy calls with people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, you don't need to touch them
You don't need to socialize.
or smell their breath, if they haven't brushed their teeth. So that's that isn't that amazing now, because now people will pay for our time without having to get on a plane, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. And for my business, I've never needed to explain it because I started it in 2020, so it started in that context, and so it's natural for me to be like, yeah, of course, we're gonna have a Zoom call. And for a lot of people I work with, actually, I realize they follow my shot. So if I say, yeah, we're gonna work on Zoom, they're like, oh, okay, I'm hiring you because you know what you're doing. So tell us how we're doing this. And if I say we're doing it on Zoom, I find I can actually often read people better on Zoom than in person, because in person I'm more distracted by other factors. Whereas when I'm on Zoom, like that's it. That's the whole world, is that box. And in fact, when I coach people, I prefer to do it on the phone, because then I'm more dialed into just their voice and what they're saying, and I'm not distracted by what they look like, what I look like, what my expression is, whatever. I can really focus on more of what they're saying. So I feel like if I were to coach in person, it would be more uncomfortable. Whereas on the phone, it creates a proper level of separation, but I can still, focus on what they're telling me.
Right. But and isn't that then the case that this is around the environment that you've created for yourself, which means you can focus at home?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do have a separate office, and it's
and that person hopefully has that as well, but you don't
Yeah.
know that. So meeting someone in a busy bar or coffee shop is just bullshit, waste of time. But meeting someone in a quiet, clean, visually not distracting, appreciate. My background is massively visually distracting, but it's also a talking point. So there's something else going on there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think environment is massive, and then so sound is the critical element. The visual then becomes the nice to have, and the sound becomes
Mhm.
the critical element. So if you're like, you notice, obviously I've got a microphone and blah blah blah. He's working in podcasts, so of course he's got a microphone, but I'm talking really quietly. So you're getting a tone of voice from me that is as close to us sitting in a very, very quiet room together. And if I didn't have this mic as close to my mouth and I couldn't hear a little bit of me back, I can hear myself back. So I've just been with my kids and it's been dinner time, right? So I'm a bit, I'll be talking like this. And it's a different guy. It's the on-stage guy. And that's not what client interactions are. And that's not what great podcasts are. Great podcasts are you're listening into a conversation. So, and I know you're streaming it on video, so I don't want to kind of piss on your parade with any of it. But the power of the non-visual and the recognition that we heard our mother's voice before we saw her face, and all of that. There's something about when you remove a visual that it heightens the listening, and it's actually easier to connect with people without the visual bollocks. So, yeah.
Well, I have 5 podcasts. 3 of them are audio only. 2 of them are live stream, because if you live stream audio, just because of the way people receive it, live stream audio is its own separate thing that hasn't really been widely adopted, which is why we're live streaming video. I actually tried taking the audio from this and releasing it as an audio podcast, and what I discovered was if you put 5 people on a screen, someone's got an audio artifact. A little hiss, a little crackle, a little something. Sometimes 2 of them do. And on video, you have enough input that you don't notice. In fact, I'm hearing something. There's enough that you don't notice. You're like, okay, there's something in the background, but it's not terrible. But if it's just audio, like if you're listening to that in your car, all you hear is that echo or that sound. Or so I think the first 2 episodes or so I put out in audio format, and I'm like, I can't listen to this, and I can't stand knowing this audio exists in the universe. I'm taking it down. So but that's because of the nature of this show. If this were more highly produced, if I had a producer going through cleaning up the 5 tracks and everything else, then it could work with audio. But and some of that goes to the idea of figure out what the show is for, what it needs to do the thing it's for, and then do that. My audio podcast used to spend an hour producing each episode, 40-minute interview, and then an hour of production. And I realized I'm not going to have a podcast in 2 months if I keep doing this, because I think I had, I don't know, 9-10 interviews backed up, and I was putting out an episode every 3.5 weeks because I'm like, oh, I gotta put this on.
But sometimes our team spend 10-12 hours putting something together that's 45 minutes long.
Yeah, but so I streamlined my process so I can do it in 8 minutes, and it's
right. But the result is the result. It sounds like some guys rush to put something together.
I don't think so. I'm sure you could tell the difference between the ones I spent more time and less time on, but I think the average listener could not.
Yeah. Well, then that. So then that's my question really around the value of audio editing and cleaning stuff up. This is a natural conversation, and you're basically relying and hoping that Steve and I are going to show up and be coherent and talk, and it's a nice vibe. It's like a hang, right? I'm not saying this is a podcast, right? But another Julian treasurism that I really value is this question, which I wonder what the answer is, which is, if you take the Power Lunch live show, and I have no idea because I'm a guest and this is your show, and Steve, you can tell me as well, what is, this sounds weird, what is the listening that you're speaking into? i.e., someone who's tuning into your show, could be a podcast, could be this, whatever, but let's take this. What is their listening position? Do they know Michael, or have they just come across him? Where are they a little bit critical of if this is going to work? Are they a little bit apprehensive? What's their position? And then how, during the process of them listening to this, and you don't know because it's a random guest thing, so I appreciate it's a slight outlier, how are we going to change their listening to position to be maybe slightly more open to joining your thing, Michael? Because actually what you're doing is proving beyond all measure of anything that loads of people in different places, right?
Yeah, and that's the answer. That's what this show does.
But what's their position? But what's their position now? Like when Steve's talking about what's their pain, or like, what is that? Do they have a pain? Do they have to have a pain, or is it just that they're looking for a result that they don't have right now?
So I think most people who tune in for this, it's they know the guy who knows a guy knows a bunch of people, and I wonder who he knows this week.
Right.
It's basically like, sample my network. I have as many as 4 of them coming on this show. You can hear them talk. You can ask for introduction to them. It's like going to a networking event without going to a networking event.
Yeah. So what can they do?
Just dropping on a networking event.
Yeah. What can they do? And I think that's so important. What's their listening position? How can we change it? Why is Michael doing this? Why is he doing it? But it's great. I love that you're doing it.
People ask why I'm doing things all the time, and I'm like, I don't even know why I'm doing this one.
Nothing else to do, right?
You've met my wife.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. So.
Well, and there's like my other show, the Neurodiversity Superpowers podcast. When I first launched that, it's because I met a lot of entrepreneurs who were neurodiverse, ADHD, autism, dyslexia, etc., and they were successful because of it, and it shifted my perception of my own ADHD. And I said, I want to tell that story. And for a moment, I was thinking, is this podcast just going to be a hobby project? Because I don't have a product that goes with it. I mean, I have a keynote that I have yet to give on the topic, but I don't have there's not necessarily any kind of, like, it doesn't attach to any of my programs or whatever. But then what I discovered once I started doing it was, one, I got to learn a lot about different people's neurodiversity. And also I got to meet, because I'm interviewing successful people who are neurodiverse, I got to meet them. You mentioned Anna Malakian. She was one of my guests on the Neurodiversity Superpowers podcast. So I got to meet her because of the show. I wouldn't have met her without that show. So but it started with, I want to have these conversations and shift this perception. And then as I was doing it, I started to discover more value it could create, and that, this isn't a hobby. This could actually, possibly tie into my business, which is always a positive thing. because it lets me have conversations with people that they would not. My guests on that show, I'm sure they're on all kinds of other shows because they're very successful entrepreneurs, but I bet they're not having the same conversation on those other shows that they are on mine.
No. Yeah, which is exactly what any of us want. Is we want that human connection with someone that is ultimately the reason why they recommend or choose to work with us, partner with us in whatever way, is because there's many of us offering the same result on paper. Steve, you and I basically could have the same bio, but some people are gonna just like you more, and that's okay because there's loads of them. There's loads of these people around, so actually it's better to know each other and to say, look, I get it, you hate my accent and you don't like the fact there's a drum kit behind me. Would you be open to meeting my friend Steve Feld? Right. I think that's important too. It is to move away from the competitive and towards a collaborative.
Oh, absolutely.
In my sort of experience.
Yep. For me, there's nothing more exciting than meeting someone who does what I do. I have met all of, I think, 5 people in the world who are professional connectors. And 2 of them actually have the same business model. So I've met 3 people, including myself, who do what I do. And every time I meet one, I'm like, oh my God, there's another one. But, if all of us were maxed out on clients, we would have touched something like 0.1% of the addressable market. So, competition is absolutely not a factor. And it's, especially with networking, teaming up makes us all stronger. So I love networking with other networking concierges because they get the idea of, I have a client, they're looking for this. Can you help me? And they're like, totally. I have a client looking for this. Can you help me? And we can serve each other in that way and thus provide more value without costing us anything. And, if we introduce our clients to each other, then, if I introduce my client to their client, now we've each served our client. Everybody wins all at once. So, competition is a foolish concept. So when I look at those groups like BNI, which are, only one per seat, and I get why you only have one broker and one realtor, and because you're not going to buy 2 houses, you're only going to have one. But it's just such a different. It's not a vibe I like networking in because it's such a scarcity kind of mindset.
Yeah, it's weird though, isn't it? Because you might only buy 1 house, but there's, you're only going to list with 1 agent normally. So what's the problem? Why can't the realtors partner together and work out and say, hey man, this is a tough part of town, we could do a deal and both market that property. At least we're making something. But no, they are broadly stuck in the mud and do the same thing. I've just been trying to sell my house, and it's definitely not going to happen now that the whole of the UK is falling to pieces. But and it's fine. It's not like we need to move house, but it's like maybe we'll sell our house. And they all did the same thing. They all came over. They all gave us the dog and pony show. They all shit talked the competition, and then all massively under-delivered on the promise and didn't get any viewings, or didn't get, and the viewings they did get, because I understand that the market is the market, and it's quiet and people are worried about money. But the viewings they did get, they sent the juniors in who hadn't even been to our house before to do the viewings. You're like, well, that was your chance. That was your chance to sit there and say to these people, where do you live and what are you looking for in a house and all of that. And they all went, here are the bedrooms, here's the kitchen, this is the garden. What do you think?
This is a house that was.
Like, wow. It's like almost $1 million thing, like what are you doing? Sending these people in, It's absolutely nuts. So
the trick is find some Americans who want to buy an investment property.
Right.
Who will buy it in dollars.
Yeah, right now we'd make more money, wouldn't we?
Because your house is on sale.
Right, exactly. I know my house is on sale. My house is reduced drastically. You guys could come in and get it. So yeah, it's a funny old game, isn't it? But I think partnerships are a wonderful thing.
Yeah. One of the couple of connectors I know now. I'm getting more into like the connection for commission space, with investments and whatnot. And one thing I'm seeing is chain connection. So I know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows the person who's going to invest, and everyone along that chain gets to share in the commission. And it's structured so that if there's someone who I kind of met them through Steve, but I sort of met them myself, I'll count Steve as being part of it, because we're splitting it 6 ways instead of 5 ways, 16% versus 20%, whatever. So it lets you build more relationships, share more, and it's a totally non-competitive model because there's enough for everyone, because it is in a very abundant space, which is a much more powerful mindset.
Remember, like blockchain networking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of is.
It is. Yeah. NFT that thing.
Yes. Still haven't quite figured out what the model of NFTs is. I sort of get it, but I understand what they are. I don't understand how they work economically. But that's a question for another day, because it is now
You're the wrong guys. Got the wrong guys to talk about NFTs.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe next week I'll manifest that. But we're coming to the top of the hour, whichever hour it is where you are. So we're going to do our final go around, final words. If you have someplace you want to send people or a website to give them or whatever, now is the time to do that. So, Toby, final words.
Yeah, well, just to say, if you've sat through the last hour of this, congratulations, well done. Thank you for your attention. Thanks for having me, Michael, and great to meet you, Steve. And if you'd like to learn more about how to create a podcast that grows your business, then I'd love to invite you to take my Profitable Pod Method quiz, which is over at narrowpodcasting.com, and it's going to show you exactly the roadblock that might be holding you back. And even if you do have a podcast already, it will show you maybe where the results will show you the where you can improve and tune it up. And that's, of course, completely free over at narrowpodcasting.com.
And I also encourage you to get his book.
Oh, yeah. Buy my book. Yeah, no, my book is my book. The thing about a book is I know it's going to take you time, and most people aren't going to read a book. And I totally understand that. It's a
just get it on Audible and listen to it. You're already listening to podcasts.
But it is on Audible. And if you like a British accent, I'm all over it. So narrow podcasting, there's books, there's courses and stuff, but the quiz is a nice, quick 1 minute way to get in my life, and you'll find other stuff as well. So thank you.
There you go. All right. Biz Coach Steve Feld, final thoughts.
Oh, thanks for having me, Michael. Nice to meet you, Toby. I'm big on helping business owners grow and survive and thrive and build a long-term sustainable business. So more than happy to give away one of my books, 45-Minute Business Breakthroughs. It's just 8 simple, proven strategies that you can actually implement in your business right away and not spend a penny on marketing or advertising to do it. So, and it's a nice, easy, quick read. And some people have joked how fast they can get through it. And it's like, now you have to implement something. Just pick one of them and implement it.
That's the hard part. You got to do something.
Just got to do something. Oh my God, to grow your own business. Oh my gosh. But if you need help, I'm there to help you as well.
And they can find that at Biz Coach Steve.
bizcoachsteve.com/100K.
All right. And my final words. So you can find us. Oh, look, we have comments.
No.
Apparently, Kurt Walkert. He's got to
I love that someone's watching.
Look,
it's amazing, Casey Hamilton.
We have live people watching. Hello, Casey.
Casey, I'm not going to talk about NFTs.
She also likes the show, so thank you. See, God, we do have people watching. Look at that, which is funny because the number in the corner is telling me 0, but apparently LinkedIn doesn't report. So we have stealth people watching. We have stealth viewers. You never know who might be watching. That's why you just put your content out there, and you never know what might happen. So it's very exciting. So if you want to be on this show, then see that scroll at the bottom where it says guyknowsaguy.com/powerlunch. That's the application to get on the show.
Casey, get in there.
Yes. So if you think you're interesting enough to be on this show, you probably are. Fill it out. You never know. Make some good connections. Awesome things happen. Casey's totally still watching. Hi, Casey.
See.
See, she waved and everything.
Oh
Thank you.
my God, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So definitely fill it out and join us next week at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Same bat time, same bat channel, and leave more comments during the show. Don't wait till the end. Do it all the way through. We love interaction.
We would have been much better if we'd known people were watching and commenting.
Yeah. We have an audience. What? Why didn't anyone tell us there was an audience out there? All right.
I was drinking gin the whole way through.
Well, that can sometimes make it better too. That's a whole
Friday night.
whole different kind of show. All right. Yeah. And once again, the power of time zones. Because for Toby, it's what, 8 o'clock there?
8 a.m. Yeah, drink it. No, it's 8 p.m.
Yeah, it's 8 p.m. So that's fair.
Yeah, it's fair.
Well, you know, if it's 1 p.m. like it is where Steve is it 1 p.m.?
Noon.
That's noon. Yeah, if it's noon, that's a little early for gin.
What?
Oh, maybe not. Who am I to judge?
Not in mountain time.
Yeah. It's always gin mountain time.
Yeah.
All right.
Always
I'm
5
going to
o'clock
stop before
somewhere.
I get myself in trouble. Thanks for coming on the show. I'm going to hit this red button and stop the broadcast. Thanks for watching.
Cheers.